Live. It's
Live from New York. Thursday night. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, thank you.
All right, so we have 6:30 in the point. Let's get the point out of the way.
Straining my
You
eyes.
should charge a fee for every time you change something.
Isn't there a fee? Isn't there a fee already?
We could get more. All right, give us your best shot.
Okay, Tim Power with Land Strategies, representing the Point projects, just an A&R between what we're calling lots 5 and 6 to adjust the as-built conditions of the cinema, and just sort of clean up now that those buildings are built and building all is underway.
That little spot right there, that's all you want to move?
Yep, just so we get it, we get the cinema clearly on lot 6, and as it was built, it's half on, mostly on lot 6 and a little bit on lot 5.
Board have any questions or issues with this? It's in the circle.
How many feet over are we talking about? Or it's-
It's shown on this plan, this dash line, this over the cinema, you can see where, the back of the building, the cinema building, one-story concrete building, the building on the plan, right?
So it's moving 130 feet?
so the frontage, it's the 130 feet of frontage that's on lot 5, they're just going to move it to lot 6 in an arc code.
Well, the frontage doesn't change, we've kept the frontage the same on Constitution Ave, clearly changing the back of the lot line.
Do you want a bigger?
I just want to make sure I understand what it is that I'm looking at. So it's this space right here.
So this is the lot line today.
Uh-huh.
This.
Yep.
This is the cinema building, so it came through there. So
Yep.
we're just moving now to this piece here. So all of this area will become part of lot 6.
Okay. So it's like,
Five.
okay. Thank
Does
you.
that include the circle out front of the cinema as well? Looks like
We're not editing this circle. We're not changing the cul-de-sac
Okay.
dimensions.
And everything in the back is basically buffer anyway, right?
It's all, yeah, it's really all, I mean, there's some driveway and some parking behind the cinema, but then it goes up the hill,
Mostly a big hill.
mostly.
Do you have any problem with it?
I have no issue.
I'll entertain a motion to.
Make a motion to approve the A&R as presented.
Second?
Second, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
How's that, is that easy?
Love it, thank you very much. This is the Mylar to sign.
I even left a pen there for you.
And there's a fancy pen for mine.
And we'll get to see Tim again on September 13th for the updating the sign standards.
Yes. Which are already in Mara's hands, so there's plenty of time to review and continue the conversation.
I'm sure it'll be a fruitful discussion.
I picked a nice light agenda to join. Figured it'd be easy.
He's on at 9:30, right?
I'll bring the espresso.
There you go.
Great.
And I don't know if anybody put the date on it, but August 22.
Yeah, that's what we should do. When you guys come in, you should bring something to us that is sold at the point, like, well, what do they sell there? Starbucks coffee, maybe Starbucks coffee or something like that. And you
We
show
brought
them
dumplings from Taka that just opened now.
It's finally open?
Yeah.
It's very good.
Have you been there already?
Yes,
Great.
we were there for lunch
Oh, great.
yesterday.
See, that's what you should do. All right, thank you.
Jim, nice to see you.
Yep.
Always a pleasure.
Always.
All right, we have a 6:40 master plan implementation update, Littleton Common revitalization. Get him out of here fast too.
I'm sorry?
We'll get you out of here quick too.
We can only hope. I'll wait till he finishes rolling out.
That's so noisy.
I thought for a while they were going to say something funny about split screen, but I didn't want to do that. All right. Do you have any objection if I sit to you?
No,
I'll rise.
please.
I've been sitting all day, but this is, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Board. First of all, I'd just like to do some quick reminders so that we know what we're about here. The Master Plan Implementation Committee was formed by the Planning Board and the Board of Selectmen to guide and promote. So what we try to do is provide guidance through various means and promote when the appropriate boards have indicated this is going to be town policy. So I want to be clear on the negative, we don't make policy. We made a decision to focus on initially 7 key high-priority items as identified by the public in the master plan. And those 7, I'm just reviewing them, are shown on this slide. And I'm not going to review except to point out to you that the Littleton Common was one of, shall we say, the top priority items as set by the townspeople who accepted the master plan. And along with transportation and especially housing targeted development. And the others that you see there, including space needs at Town Hall building, also were rated very highly. May I have the next slide, please? Here's the update status, and you should keep in mind the implementation committee, also known as MPIC, works through other committees, including yours, to accomplish the town's objectives. So these are not objectives set by any particular board, they're basically set by the town. You're all familiar with housing targeted development, and to give you some idea, I do understand, attending the public meetings, that progress is being made, and I just wish to convey the sentiment of the Master Plan Implementation Committee, that we wish you to continue on, because this is something of great importance to the town, and not to be persuaded by, shall we say, either narrow or special interest. This has to do with the health and vitality of the town. The historic survey has been completed. We're waiting for the final report. Now, the request or the requirement that we were seeking, that the town also would like to see, is have the master plan components, the projects moving forward, including the town budget, and we're slowly making progress with that, as opposed to having sort of like a landing strip. It's my turn now to have what my little plum is, and now we're trying to bring some order to what the town sets out to do and how it uses its limited resources. So this is still a work in progress, because there's still some habits about, it's my turn, and it's not going to work because there are very limited resources. Space needs at the town, yes?
Can you please elaborate on what you mean it's in progress?
It means that in order to change what has been it's my turn now point of view, we have to approach, and we have been approaching, each of the various committees that like to put projects forward, and asking them to take a look at the master plan and ask, where does your project sit on the priority list? That's number 1. And number 2, to provide some background and some, shall we say, impact about what happens if your project is done now, later, what are the advantages of it. We're trying to bring some discipline, as it were, to the process. This is guidance. And so far, it's, shall we say, it's taking a while to, as it were, take hold. We do have strong support from the selectmen and from the finance department to, as it were, keep an eye on this. But nonetheless, it's part of the process. And we also have to keep in mind that things do arise, roads, emergencies, in which, of course, they're going to come first, especially if health and safety is involved. So this is not an ironclad, you must do it in this order. It has to do more with some sense of discipline. Space, does that answer your question, Ms. Houston?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. Space needs a town office building. This one is just getting started, and we are hopeful that we'll be able to, as it were, provide some guidance to that group as well. It's a very, very large committee with a lot of opinions and point of views, and we're going to try to encourage, I would say, a more transparent set of practices where they basically follow the path of many other committees, including yours, and the past committee, the master plan committee itself, which had a number of outreach programs that brought in the public, give them an opportunity to weigh in and to have them offer. This, the town, after all, its space needs, it affects the elderly in terms of where are they going to be, it affects recreation. I don't think I need to review all the constituents that are affected by it. And so far, the space needs folks are just getting started. I think it'll take a while. Next one. All right, I want to spend a little time on the update of the common, mainly because there's a lot of, shall we say, components in flight. And this includes, I just want to mention here also, we're working not only with the planning board, the selectmen, but also with the sewering task force, which has already has a contract and a consultant for doing the design, and at some point, if the town so votes it, the construction of a sewer system for the common, which will in turn create a common sewer district. So that is moving along, and we are working, to give you an idea, we work very closely with them, exchanging information. It'll be very clear in a few moments why this is crucial. And the zoning assessment, as you probably, let me just back up, we have hired Fort Point as a consultant to help us, as it were, have a roadmap for the vitalization of the common. And it's very important in this roadmap that they carry out, and they're doing that now, is carry out what basically is analysis of our current zoning regulations that affect and are imposed upon the common. Do any of them need to be changed if the common, as it were, proceeds along a revitalization path? Well, we need to know what that roadmap looks like before we can touch the zoning. I mean, why spend time and money unless you're and we're making our, shall we say, headway in that, and I'll tell you more about this. Could I have the next slide? Okay. On the July 17th, we sponsored and Fort Point put on for us a Littleton Common workshop, which was very well attended. Various people have told me as many as 70 showed up. I didn't try to do a house count, but what I was more impressed by was the fact that I'll point out some of the things, but this really struck me as the demographics of Littleton were there. That, what I mean by that is it represented how the population in Littleton, what it really is. They were there. The very young, the elderly, along with the elected officials. So everyone was there representing some sort of constituency. So we got some sense of what the town thought they wanted or think they would like to have in the common. And for the first time, they were shown some, shall we say, useful pictures and images. And we did that primarily to present them a series of images and got their feedback, preferences from all the stakeholders. There were many out of town, I'll call them out of town commercial property owners who are residents, and residents who own residential property nearby, as well as businesses that rent. Have the next slide. All right, so I'm just going to give you the contrast because the entire program that we put on that evening, including the conversations, are all on readily available to you on the town website. I'm just going to show you for a reminder that this is what our common looks like, a portion of our common looks like now. And the reason we are only doing a section here is because we can generalize from this area to the rest of the common, It has the common has certain features of common, such as smaller lot sizes, proximity to busy streets, and flanked by residential sections with a business core such as it is in the middle. So what you see here on the lower right, upper on the right-hand side of the street as you're looking at it, that happens to be the Northern Bank's current building. To give you an idea, as you move up, you're going toward the intersection of King and Great Road. So this is what we look like now. And these are just sketches. These are not meant to represent architecture or how the town should look or will look or frankly looks. It just, as it were, what type of look we have at the moment and how we have the common organized. The next slide. This was a scenario that won, shall we say, a significant number. I'm going to venture somewhere between 70 to 80% of the folks there like this particular, shall we say, style or type for the common. And in green, and I'm not going to belabor the point, in green are shown on this, and you can see it on the website, and I believe you can see it also on your screen in front of you. You'll be able to see the kinds of changes that would, quote, be made if we went to this style of revitalization. And very frankly, from my particular point of view, when it comes to how the parking and the other, shall we say, basic, I'll call them Euclidean type zoning things are done, which is what we use at the moment. These are frankly tweaks. These are not major changes to what we have. Because, for example, right now we're sitting at a 3-floor limit. This takes us to 4 floors if we allow it, if it's okayed. So this is sort of, and there was yet another one, which is even more, but not much more than this, that required even more changes to the zoning. That got fewer enthusiastic draw. This was the one, the clear winner of the lot. Now, what this simply means is, for the first time, 2 things. Can I have the next slide? Several things. First of all, this preference of this scenario was very, very instructive because it was very clear going in and during and after that in order to accomplish any revitalization at all, including this one, sewering is required. We can't move at all without it. Just want to be very clear. However, what goes on above is a different story. That requires more town input, more work by all the boards, including ours, yours, and the selectmen, and everyone else who's involved in this. Now the next slide. All right, this is sort of the summary and of really what we call new emergent, shall we say, information that informs us going forward. First, the interest in revitalization of the common remains very strong. This is for residents, business owners, commercial property owners. I have yet to find someone who is in the common, around the common yet, who, there are exceptions, who basically feel that revitalization would not be highly desirable for a variety of reasons. Everyone understands very clearly, regardless of for or against, what you prefer, not prefer, that you need a sewer. And finally, and this is new in terms of, this is why we have these outreach sessions, because it's very, very good, very, very important, and very, shall we say, informative, that the town residents weigh in. And they come up with ideas that maybe a consultant doesn't come up with necessarily right away, or a committee doesn't come up with. And these are important because it turns out there's a desire on the part of the town, I believe, for a certain look and feel, a sense of place, a welcoming place with an emphasis on access on walking, being able to walk around to the place, to bike there, and this is important, residential housing of various types, a common meant for locals. Now, at this point, and I have the next slide, you need to move on now to the next steps. All right, so now we know, we have a better idea of what a strong preference the town has for a certain type of common. Now we have to understand what the economic and social impacts are going to be of this. And this is forthcoming on the 28th. We're going to be getting our first look at the economic and I'll call social. That is, how does the thing work? And there are going to be trade-offs made. There are no free lunches here. If we go a particular direction, we have to give certain things up. This will help us identify what we have to give up and how much it could cost us, and therefore the town can decide which way it wants to go. We're going to be having yet another forum to consider the far more complete plan and the outlook on sometime in October. I'm hoping for the date as shown. And we're hopeful that we can start doing drafting of any zoning changes that are going to need to begin the process starting in September by Fort Point coming before you and presenting, shall we say, their recommendations. Guidance, as it were, except this is much more technical, much more in your wheelhouse. Next one. All right, I just need to give you, so you know how your money's being spent and the Commonwealth's money being spent by the town. And shown here is our original budget was $140,000 from the two major sources shown above. And including there is the amount provided directly from the planning board. Thank you very much. And we've spent about $47,000, which leaves us about $93,000 still unspent. Now, we're getting bills all the time. I'm not going to go through our cash flow because they bill us as tasks get done and approved. Thanks to Maren and other members of our committee, we estimate our outlay for September coming up, mainly because that's where we're going to see the bill for the public workshop, the renderings, a lot of what we'll call labor-intensive work. It's going to be about $60,000, including economic analysis. So I don't want you to get the idea that we have $93,000 and it's going to sit there for, it's not. That will leave us, the reason I'm bringing this up is because I want you to know where we're heading, because the committee plans to provide its guidance and recommendations in the form of draft zoning, obviously, that have to pass your approval. So we're trying to present, we will be presenting to you, hopefully, something that you can begin work with, proper hearings, more editing if necessary, and bring it to town council and the rest. So we have, right now, $33,000 left to do that, which means we're just about on target for where we want to be. Can I have the next slide? Now, this came up directly as a result of the last forum. And I want to bring this up because I want to pay close attention to what the residents tell us, what the owners tell us. Right now, we are using, and I have it misspelled, but I think I've seen it spelled this way. We use basically what's called the Euclidean method of zoning. That's what you're using at the moment. You can be this far. It's numbers and telling you where you can put things. There is another old technique sitting out there, old in the sense that it's probably 50, maybe 40 years old by now. It's gone through several changes. It's called form-based, and what it does is it is code that basically provides by regulation what things should literally look like. In other words, from images. This is not build whatever you want as long as it fits in and it has the right kind of roof and you're using this material. It's a look and feel. So it's more, as it were, what is the town going to be comfortable with? What is the town going to find acceptable for the comment? And the consultants picked this up and passed on to us the strong recommendation that we consider form-based as an approach to addressing this very critical issue as seen by the residents. So what I'm suggesting to do, what I began investigating when I heard this, how much it's going to cost us, what is it, and all the rest. And the answer appears to be that the number I have up here is a little low. I asked for an estimate from Fort Point, and Fort Point had to bring in an additional pair of hands because introducing and implementing form-based from scratch is what we would be doing, basically, requires someone who knows what they're talking about. So this looks like a route, and it looks as if the current estimate for doing that work is going to be $30,000 approximately more than what we've already budgeted for zoning. So we put it together with the 33, we're looking for another 30. Number two, I've asked Maren, who has been a great assistance to our committee, to always be on the lookout for other sources of funds. And we will be looking for Commonwealth assistance in doing this. It's my understanding from the work that she's done that there is in fact the same agency that provided us with the original $50,000 in the environmental, I believe is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, that they actually have specific mention of form-based coding as a way to accomplish what they consider to be an important objective for the state. So we may have to do some hard work to convince them to do an addition, or maybe even do a whole new grant request from scratch. And I'm looking for support from the chairman, or basically your board, to come on board with a supporting letter. We'd be very happy to draft it with you, or you could draft it yourself, basically to help, as it were, go after additional funds so the town itself can have its burden reduced in order to accomplish this objective. Before we get there, we have to run two tracks, looking for the funds, and the other track is MPIC itself has to review the documents and the particular characteristics of form-based, and we have to reach a consensus so we can recommend more formally to your committee that this is, in our view, a good form of guidance. And we're going to take that under advisement, and the reason I'm not doing it tonight is because we want to see the economic impact of revitalization and how positive, negative, what are the trade-offs, so that you can be fully informed to let you know, okay, this is a worthwhile expenditure, whether it's 33 or another 30. Now, there may be others, and I'm just going to try to alert the planning board, there may be other approaches to zoning that you may know of, have used yourself. MPIC claims no expertise in this area. If Maren, who is a planning person on for the town, comes up with something, we would like to hear about it and put it into, shall we say, the process. I believe that's it.
That's it? Does the board have any questions for Mr. Mike?
So on just a quick question on form-based
Yeah.
zoning. When you talk about look and feel, and if we're talking, is that something you would want to apply? If we find that it's a viable option for the town to go that way, is it something that it gets applied townwide, or do we actually zone form-based into our zoning? Meaning, does it just work in the overlay district of the common? Or does it cover the whole town? I don't know what the thoughts are.
Okay, I hate to give you a lawyer type of I hang around with lawyers. So the answer is, it depends, but what our ambition is for the common. And the decision to take it townwide, you'd have to do some overlays. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I mean, it did occur to me, wow, this would be great for, but that's an amateur talking. So I'm not recommending or suggesting that our scope is going to be the town. However, as we see it applied to the common, which is a different kind of place, as far as I can make out, that could be, as it were, a good place to learn. The answer is, I think it's going to be for the common, and we can make up our minds later, do we want to use it elsewhere? And there, by the way, just you hit on something else. With form-based, you don't have to use it all the way through. You don't throw out what you're doing already. You blend it in. You have to be aware, however, that this still has to pass muster. Whatever you do, it's the same as any other regulation. It still has to be approved by all necessary authorities, including the state, when you try to implement it.
Anna?
Well, I actually have a question for board members in terms of whether you've seen form-based coding used elsewhere and whether or not you think it's actually worth the change from conventional zoning practices.
I haven't seen it.
So I have researched it recently in some discussions with our town planner, and we were talking about the book, so I went and got the book. So I've been reading it, and I've gotten through quite a bit so far, but I would be interested to see how it could benefit the town, if it would benefit the town. So I definitely think that there's some positives to it.
I definitely think there's a lot to be learned by all of us and all of the impact members, that it's going to really require some more knowledge before I feel comfortable moving on. I think part of what makes me uncomfortable is that being on MPEG, one of the very benefits, or one of the benefits that I saw with this particular provider was the fact that their drawings and their proposal were magnificent, and the language that was used was very much around place setting, placemaking, all fabulous. Nowhere in that proposal do I remember that they actually talked about, oh, and if you want this kind of beautiful environment, it'll cost you extra because it's going to be under form-based coding. So I just feel a little uncomfortable about that, and I'll address that with Fort Point. So from the standpoint of whether or not if it's a benefit, sure, and if we can get some additional dollars from the state agency, even better. So I think that that's, given the fact that we don't have any existing experience with it, even from our board, I think we definitely need to learn a lot more about it. Maybe even having conversations with other clients that have decided to use it versus going the
Yeah,
conventional route.
I've actually got on the phone and started talking around the country to folks, towns who adopted it, to help me understand how, and then got pictures and the whole business. And I just think that our committee, as Anna has pointed out, I think our committee has to basically take it under consideration and take a close look at it. I'm probably less concerned about the our consultant not bringing it in. They did talk about sense of place. However, I don't think it had much meaning to us, and its significance had much operational meaning to us until we had the forum, until the public talked about what they had in mind and the specificity that they brought to their comments, which got translated by the consultants in this particular direction. Because you can have a look and feel using Euclidean methods.
Right, and I was gonna get to that too,
Yeah.
because I think our existing overlay does address, like what we saw in that first slide, I think addresses a lot of what
Oh, yeah.
the look and feel was going for anyway, but if we can get, if you're gonna go, you might as well go for an A+ instead of a B-, right? So if we get there, and form-based gets us the A+, then we should look at it. I certainly don't wanna throw the baby out with the bathwater and just dump what we've been doing. I think what we do is beneficial, so.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll keep you up to date on it.
Okay.
It'll-
Michael, thank you very much.
Thank you for your
I
attention. Yeah.
actually had one other quick comment. So in moving forward with this process, one of the key points that Mike and I have been working with the consultant and with Maren is in terms of timing and bringing forward anything related to zoning for the board to review and to approve. So the ultimate deadline, if we were to have a spring town meeting item on the warrant for any amendments to zoning, we would need to have all of that done by the end of January. So I just wanted to put that milestone in everybody's mind about making sure that we work toward that.
Just a comment in passing. That is a very good target. However, there's another ongoing process that I don't think has been, I think it's been looked at and its impact, and that's something that we have no control over, and that's the schedule for there's a distance you go between, okay, the town wants to go ahead with the sewering project, and B, when does it get started and how? What's the logistics of that? So there's even more coordination involved here than.
So with the date that we've got for a benchmark mentioned by Maren, also has to run in sequence with.
Yes, I mean, we may have to, we have to be very careful. I'm not saying I'd love to reach that as our target, because that means we could move on to something else
Right.
that has urgency. But there's some, the sewering is not an insignificant project in terms of logistics.
So I think your January goes out the window for the simple reason, you're not gonna find out about the soaring probably until May's town meeting, so you're kind of putting the horse before, the cart before the horse.
Well, that's all good for us to
That's not to say
consider.
we couldn't have a special town meeting to discuss it, but the point is, you're probably not gonna really have any kind of input until.
I'm just putting
May
one
anyway.
foot in front of the other, and my eyes are way out front to make sure I hear noises.
Well, stop talking, we'll get to work.
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, 7:00. Do you wanna start with, let's start with the medical marijuana, only because the marijuana thing. because
Adult use marijuana?
Adult use marijuana.
So we're gonna jump over A and B and go to C.
Let's, only because there's not really much we're gonna do about it. The Town council has weighed in and
That we're protected.
that everything we have for that issue is protected by the bylaw that we have in place now.
Right, I had heard that the question was, would adult use, so-called recreational marijuana be able to be cultivated anywhere? And you have it defined as a use in the bylaw that you passed in May, and it's allowed by special permit it's allowed in industrial A and industrial B. And the local zoning can't touch the carve-outs that were done by the state for individuals who would grow.
You might grow your own pot, but there's nothing.
There's nothing that the town can do to override what the state has set for them.
No, we won't.
Right, so I'm just trying to, that's the easy one, there's not really much we can do about that. We're protected, we're good the way we are. We still can only have 2 dispensaries, and that's part of the original.
2 retail storefronts.
Right, so that's all taken in the bylaw that we have, so there's really no need to try to do anything to tweak it or do anything else. We're, according to the town council, we're good the way we are. Does anyone in the audience have any questions about that before we move on? Trying to get the easy ones out of the way first, okay.
So, that being said, I would wanna, if we need to, I'll make a motion that we withdraw any revisions to the adult use marijuana bylaw as written.
Actually, I have one quick question to clarify. The second to the last page under 173-201B1, it says hours of operation including dispatch for home delivery. I thought home delivery was no longer part of bylaw.
I think it's allowed.
It is allowed?
Yeah.
I thought home delivery wasn't.
I mean, it makes sense, you get pot, you get pizza, home delivery, do it all at the same time, maybe
Stop.
Pepsi to go with it.
Well, I seem to recall that there was some discussion at the state that home delivery was.
No, they just, the big debate at the state level, my recollection is that they weren't gonna do marijuana cafes. We've done this now.
Well, I just want to make sure that we're in alignment with that.
So can I amend my,
And actually, I was just reading what that refers to, and it says, if you issue a special permit, you can include conditions, you shall include conditions, including hours of operation for dispatch. or
I would
delivery.
venture to guess that we're not gonna allow it by special permit.
Yeah, yeah.
We don't allow,
right, but I don't think we wanna exclude it now, we can exclude it in the special.
as a special permit, if the one comes before us, we don't allow drive-throughs, I don't think we're gonna allow.
Okay, well, I just wanted to
Take it.
clarify because that one's the only thing that stood out after I reread it. Thank you.
All right, so we're good with that.
Motion.
I'll make a motion to withdraw,
I made the motion.
I will entertain a second on that one. To withdraw any revisions to the adult use marijuana bylaw that we feel that it's adequate as presented at town meeting a year and a half, 2 years ago,
No,
right?
no, actually, in May.
All right, whenever it was. All right. Anybody want to second that? Just say yes.
No, don't, think about it.
Well, everything's fine, we're not gonna do anything to it.
Yeah.
All right,
Absent a second from anybody else, you can make a second.
I'll second it then. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Abstain.
Okay. What do you want to try next? Want to try home occupation?
I think the proposal that was made, when Shelley came in from the building department as our zoning enforcement officer, or agent, I'm not sure what the title is, but there's the presentation to modify the home occupation to allow a little bit more broader use for parking vehicles. I thought was reasonable, it was a reasonable request.
I'm trying to pull up the document, the discussion document that we had.
So this is for home occupations or the accessory?
I'm sorry, accessory.
Accessory, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was on the other one, which one?
Home occupation, I thought we were doing next.
I'm sorry.
17354, customer home occupation,
Yeah.
so we're looking to,
Okay, yeah, there is, the definition for home occupation currently is narrower than what is proposed, and you hadn't had a discussion yet on this proposal. The question is if you want to, or are we propose this for the fall town meeting? Differences.
as presented by the zoning enforcement agent.
Shelley didn't.
She brought it up for discussion,
Right.
and she made the recommendations for the changes. The Board of Appeals may authorize by special permit a home occupation which one conducts retail sales or services, has no more than 2 additional employees, no outside storage of product, has no more than 1 unregistered motor vehicle or related equipment forward of the front line of the building.
So what about the home office where customers might go to that office? Because that would produce additional vehicle pulling in, pulling out.
Right, and home occupations now allow 1 employee, and with the understanding that there may well be some amount of deliveries. And if it becomes a problem and neighbors or somebody complains, then that's when it would be enforced.
So it's okay until it becomes a problem, is what you're
Right,
saying?
and that's pretty much what the letter from the building department says when somebody applies for a home occupation currently. I think that process would change.
I don't know if we really want to tackle this one right now, for the simple reason,
Well, so in tackling it, I think the people that we're trying to help are the people who run businesses out of their homes, such as contractors, landscapers. We're allowing 1 additional vehicle. So instead of saying can't park your pickup truck that says, S&S custom roofs.
That says unregistered. Most of the contractors and everything have registered vehicles that they park in front of their house. And I don't think we want to, for years it's been.
Well, I think it's because sometimes you have a trailer that has a
Okay.
piece of equipment on
But that has to be registered as well, so this is
it.
unregistered.
Equipment doesn't have to be
The
registered.
equipment doesn't, but what's on the trailer does.
Sure.
The issue's always been with the landscapers, the painters, the general contractors who come home and have a truck, and as long as they're not storing a million things in their yard and it doesn't make their yard look any substantially different to the neighbor, it's always been fine.
Mhm.
I don't think we want to expand it any more than that right now, because then we start getting into more and more uses that people are gonna do in their homes that were not really the spirit of intention of when this bylaw was done, which I think is like, what is it, about 15 years old right now?
No, actually, I think it's quite a bit more than that. One of the reasons to look at it now is we now have a zoning enforcement officer who will have time to start going after some of the businesses that are not in compliance. And the question is, they know of some situations where this would bring a few more of the sites into compliance, this recommendation.
So is the highlighted piece, that's what we're reviewing, it's there now?
This is,
Yes. And it's highlighted because we are due to revisit it in case we find some issues with it, is that correct?
I thought the highlights were the revisions, is it?
They are the
Yeah,
revisions?
yeah, okay.
So-
Sorry.
Yeah.
In the town of Pepperell, a friend of mine who has a trucking company, he runs it out of his house. They have something similar to this, and he had several trucks in his yard, he always has. He added 2 more. They were unregistered, I believe, because he was using them for parts to put together an antique truck, and the neighbors complained. And he had been running his trucking business out of his home, because he's an owner-operator for many years, and all of a sudden it caused all this headache. And I'm reading this and thinking about all of the people that run small businesses, and I don't know.
Right, and the idea is that this change would bring more of those into compliance with the updated bylaw.
So no outside storage of products, so if somebody's garage is, I mean, like, what, I hate stuff like this. I feel like it's like dictating how you can keep your property.
Well, so, and I think the idea of how we dictate how you keep your property is only because one of the things you don't want in any town is to make sure that your neighbor doesn't bring your property value down, you know?
Fair.
So the whole idea of this portion of the zoning is to make sure that we give something that benefits the majority of the town, at the same time protects the people who are your abutters or the abutters to somebody who might have junk and debris spread out their yard. And now your property, your house is worth less than the house the next street over because they don't have the junk and the debris. So I understand there's a balance we're trying to create. I think the modifications to this bylaw where we lift some of the restrictions so that, you know, the blue-collar worker who runs an operation out of their home, small businesses, can operate without the fear of enforcement. At the same time, you know, we're still not going to allow the spillage of debris from your garage to be in your yard. You know, empty paint cans, axles, tires.
It's still putting us on an awkward position, because when it was originally started, it was for the small home base, the people that did pottery in their house, the people that had, there was a couple of small dentists in town that got in under this, that had a small little practice in their homes and things
Yeah.
like that. That if you looked at it, you wouldn't know there was a business in the house.
Right.
It's,
So what are we doing to the landscapers and the contractors and
as long as they have one truck and they have not a bunch of unregistered equipment there, it hasn't been an issue.
one truck? But I mean, sometimes,
The truck and the trailer, whatever's registered, because the other thing is, you don't want it to look.
I agree, you don't want it to look like an industrial park next to the
Right.
residential.
A lot of
neighborhood.
people have trucks now.
We're trying to find the balance,
Even
right.
people that don't, commercial enterprises drive trucks,
Mhm.
you know, so I get it, some of them are gonna have lettering and everything, but if there's a truck out there and maybe a trailer with some lawnmowers on it, that's not as offensive as somebody with a truck, a tractor trailer.
Or 7 trucks that have all the
and-
same lettering on
And backhoes and everything else, that's not really a home occupation.
them. But I think they're looking to add one additional vehicle. I think that's what they're trying.
And then you're gonna cut it off at that, one additional.
I don't know,
like
I
the-
don't know, I think we should spend more time on it.
Yeah,
think we should-
I don't wanna.
Well, that's
go
what,
on this tonight.
my point is, I don't think we need to, are we gonna try to get this done for fall town meeting? That's kind of the point.
I don't know that we have to, but we can certainly keep it as a working piece and present it in, you know, annual town meeting or
That's-
special town meeting.
I think it takes a little more than a
So,
15-minute
Mr. Chair,
discussion.
if I may ask, I do think it requires more discussion. That being said, would you consider assigning this to 2 members of the board to come up with a draft?
I would, and I would also like to have some of the people that are using this bylaw come before us and see what they like or don't like about it, and how maybe we have an open meeting that discusses this. My point, what I was trying to say is, I think it's too much to try to get to fall town meeting.
I don't think we spend enough time on it.
Exactly.
I would agree, but I would like to see that we continue to work on it.
I
So that's why I
agree,
would
but I
ask if you
do
want.
think we need to bring some people that are doing this now, and the pros and cons of it, and yes, and work on it, and yes, I think if we're gonna get a couple of people on the board to look into it, I'd be happy to be part of that as well.
Okay.
But do you agree? We really can't,
No,
it's gonna take longer than 15 minutes
yeah.
to to come up with any ideas for. We need to kind of bring people in and discuss it for Springtown meeting, not
Yeah,
fall.
I don't disagree that we should spend some time on it. I'm glad that we'll continue to work on it.
Yeah,
You, Mr. Chair, I hear you say that you'd like to be part of that.
sure, I wouldn't mind being part of that. You don't want to?
No, I would, but I didn't want to, if anybody else would want to, I didn't want to take away from it. I do think it's, I'm interested, so,
I'm good.
okay. Be happy to work with you.
Okay.
All right.
So why don't we have a little, and we'll set up getting, maybe in January, February, get some of the,
Public input.
exactly.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay, so we're gonna continue working on that for a future town meeting. Okay, so what's left? The accessory, let's do the accessory next.
Okay.
Accessory apartment, so, I really like the process for the accessory apartment bylaw. You had the suggestions from the building department, town council took all of the information and drafted a bylaw and came up with a few questions. I gave my answers, building department gave those answers. And we're left with basically two questions. One is, under the current bylaw for accessory apartments, you had a requirement for screening if the driveway was closer than 15 feet to the lot line, 4-foot screening, and my understanding was that you intended to keep that part of the bylaw rather than, because that disappeared from the drafting.
You know, in my opinion, that should stay in. It's important that we, you know, if we're going to allow the additional dwelling unit, that we protect the abutters, so the screening should remain.
And then the other question, policy question, was the way it's drafted at the moment, mobile homes would be allowed as the dwelling unit, I'm not thinking of the right word, the third style, the not attached.
Detached accessory dwelling?
Yes, and I hadn't heard that in the discussions at all. The town
Well,
council.
it certainly gets to the affordability component. That being said, I don't know that we want to allow mobile homes behind a structure in a residential neighborhood for an accessory, detached accessory dwelling.
And since we don't allow mobile homes anyway.
Right, that's what it's getting at.
Yeah.
But that being said, I think mobile homes should be part of a future discussion regarding affordability.
So those were the two remaining questions that I saw.
And
So, Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Sure. Isn't it nice we're
So-
civilized tonight? Wonder why we are. Is there a reason why we're acting so civilized to one another this evening?
So comment around, and Maureen, I don't think this is your comment. While a definition is not necessary, the board may want to consider whether adding a definition would be useful. And you commented, yes, a definition would be useful.
Yes. Definition of,
primary single-family dwelling unit and functionally dependent.
yeah, functionally independent, right?
Yeah. Well, it seems like.
So, going through that, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but accessory dependent dwelling unit, an interior dwelling unit that is occupied by one or more persons related, and when we get to number one, there's related by blood, marriage, or adoption to the occupants of the primary single-family dwelling unit. I think the part, I think instead of blood, can it say family? Because there's plenty of families out there that aren't blood related, and I think that it's important that, most people can make that distinction when they know it's family, it's a family member. It's always, I think, blood gets.
Actually, we have one more, shoot, there was one more version.
It's okay. If you can't get it here, can you put it up? And where it says dwelling unit is functionally dependent for medical or other reasons? Can it be functionally dependent for any reason?
Well, so I was thinking about that, because the ADL, the assisted daily living, I mean, typically that's what somebody is there to help for.
Mhm.
And I was trying to figure out what other reasons, what would the other reasons be?
Well, one comment that we've heard before was a nanny.
Mhm.
Uh-huh. That's a good one.
Mhm. I think it gets to those by saying it for any reason.
You like things broad, huh?
So
I think
if we could just ask town council for recommended definition, then we could shoot that at the
Right.
And that would be helpful.
public hearing.
If we move down to B, an accessory apartment, interior dwelling unit provided with a permanent fire rated separation, 2 separate means of egress in a Title V compliant septic system. So a shared system is still compliant to Title V.
Correct.
So I think the wording is fine because it is compliant, whether it's a shared system or 2 separate systems for the
Mhm.
dwellings, as long as the property can support
Right.
whether it's a shared system or 2 systems, and we'll leave that to our associates on the Board of Health.
Yeah, and Shelley just provided a little bit of clarification in her comment back, that it is compliant and
So do you want to schedule this for a public hearing then?
I think we should go, yeah, I think we should go to, like Maureen said, have town council weigh in with a draft, with a conversation we've had. And then-
So that means we have to schedule another meeting probably in September. So why don't we?
We're on the 4th now.
Well, Fort Point has some leeway in when they would meet with you for the next steps on zoning for Littleton Common. So it could either be, we've got a meeting scheduled the 13th with public hearings, so it could either be the 6th, I'll be away for then, or it could be following that.
I think we need it after that.
Okay. Yeah, so the next is the 20th.
27th. What's,
Well, you have,
I don't know offhand my calendar for those dates, but
what's good for you?
The end of the month?
The end of the month is 27th or the 20th? Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me. Wait a second, it does. I won't be here the 20th, September 20th.
let's go with
Well, actually, I will be, it's a Thursday, I will be here the 21st, I'm fucking away. So I could still do the 20th.
Can we put it down 10 or for the 20th and I'll confirm?
20th, good?
So that's a week after our regular meeting?
Yeah. But
And
then
no
two-
rest for the year.
Would you rather do 2 weeks after? Because then the other problem is we're gonna be right, if we do it the 27th, we're gonna be right into the first week of October.
October, right.
So why don't
So
we do
either
it?
way.
Mhm.
Yeah, why don't we do it the 20th? Anybody in the audience have anything on this one? No? Not too good on TV, I guess. All right. I guess last but not least, the senior residential bylaw.
And so you will, if you would vote to ask the selectmen to include a warrant article about about the accessory apartment bylaw.
I'll make a
Make
motion
that addition.
to
Ask them to hold us a spot for it.
accessory apartment bylaw.
Please make them aware of that, thank you. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we'll hold a spot for that one.
Yep.
Okay. You know what I meant.
And schedule the public hearing for
Let's
that.
schedule the
Yep.
public hearing for the 20th of September, first public hearing for this,
Yep.
20th of September.
Thank you.
All right, so now we're on to senior residential development. Okay, so I asked that we schedule this meeting because I'd like to talk about maybe adding a little bit more to the senior residential bylaw that we have now. We had 2 of them before us, we've been weighing through them, it's been a painful and arduous task to get to where we're at so far, and I think we need to talk about, now that we've immersed ourselves in in this bylaw, we need to talk about what we need to do to make it a better bylaw. I'm not saying it's a bad bylaw, I think it just needs to be more for lack of better, and from my perspective, more senior friendly. It's a senior residential bylaw, but it doesn't really address the senior issues, as we've seen from what we've been dealing with, that there is no protection, there is no guarantee, there's a lot of things that the seniors have all been asking for that just aren't in there, and we need to,
Well, I would say that it's in the bylaw. It hasn't been proposed by either of the two proponents that have come before us
Okay.
to meet the requirements of the whole bylaw or the complete intent of the bylaw. But I think the bylaw holds the information that you're talking about.
well,
And the concern I have when we talk about, you know, it all goes back to age restriction, right? If we talk about age restriction, the issue is that we don't get to count that to our affordable units in the 10%. So it's a balancing act. I mean, can we push it out for a while and perhaps we can age restrict by special permit?
but then it still doesn't matter, you're still age restricting it, so you're still doing the same thing, you're still not gonna be able to count them. I don't think.
Right, so if you're not going to be able to count them, what's the benefit to the town to approve it then? Right, unless the units become affordable, and as you like to say, all of them become affordable,
More of them become.
or more, all right, but I'm trying to make your argument is that if we age restrict
Can
it,
I make it myself first?
please, I'm sorry, I
All
didn't.
right, thanks. I didn't know, yeah. The point I'm trying to get is that the way the bylaw is written now, more of the benefit is to the developer and less is to the town and specifically the seniors. I think we need to age restrict it, and I understand the pitfall of that is the fact that we don't get to count them on our housing inventory to worry about the big bad 40Bs coming down the road. I don't think that's an issue that should be sitting on the backs of the seniors. I think the seniors need help right now. I think the units that we're trying to get them are more important than worrying about potential 40Bs further down. I think it's now and it's the next couple of years, and we need to at least address that issue now. Whether we voluntarily or ask through a special permit that they all be deeded and age restricted, that's the first part of it. The second one is the price. We're not getting units that are, when we originally went down the street, we were told that you give a higher density, you're gonna get a lower price. We're not seeing that. I think we need to artificially come up with a way to make sure that we do get lower prices, or we don't do the senior residential, they go to a conventional open space or whatever they do otherwise, because it's not beneficial to the seniors to be at the price points we're
Right,
looking at.
and before we go shredding the proposals that are in front of us, I think they're both in for peer review currently through Green and through Barrett Associates, am I right? And so,
The Cricket Lane is,
Cricket Lane
King Street is not yet.
it is not. So, the push that I've had all along is I want to see what our paid consultants and the professionals have to say in regards to the proposal at Cricket Lane. I think we're going to be better informed to have this discussion when we get those peer reviews back.
But we need to have it now because we have to keep going with it because the peer review stuff isn't gonna come in September. If we wanna change this in October's town meeting, we have to start now.
Well, I don't know that we should be, just like rushing the other ones through, I don't know that we should rush any changes through on this one. We worked really hard. Anything that you've talked about, we can already restrict.
We can't.
We can restrict it in special permit. We can put an age restriction on.
Age restricting is not what I'm talking about. Age restricting, yes.
So the
we can.
affordability component, we can certainly talk about getting money from, well, there's no money in the fund yet, but there's also money through, and help me remember the word.
CPA?
Thank you. We can get, CPC funds to help make it affordable. We can buy units that way.
It's not about us buying it, it's about making this bylaw more balanced. Right now, it's not balanced. It's the developers are here and the town's down here. They're getting the
So
density.
I
and we're
understand
not.
what you're saying, but I think that's because of,
It's because the way the bylaw's written.
I think it's because of the market.
No, it's the way well, it is the market. So if you artificially, like those slides we saw earlier, they're setting the price. They're coming in and saying, if the median market price of this 80% is $188,000. So if we
Right.
change the bylaw and say that's 80%, 188,000, we say X amount of units are gonna be at, say 50% are gonna be, or 30% are gonna be at that price. If you wanna go through this and you wanna get the higher density, then you have to cap what the rest of them are gonna be at. So let's say 200%. Right now, we're at 80%. 200% of affordability puts it at 376. Nobody that's proposing to us is at 376. And that's 200% of what is considered affordable. Is that asking too much to put it in the bylaw so that at least the seniors know what they're going to be spending? They've all said that they can't afford
What we've
400.
seen. Yeah, no, I
400, 500.
I do hear you
I'm
there.
just trying to think if we're going to fix it, we might as well fix it sooner rather than later before more of them keep coming in, because we need guidance and direction where we're going with this. That's what I'm trying, that's why I think now is the time rather than wait to have
I
more of
actually
them
think
before us.
both is the time. I think that, I know that I have some recommended changes, and when we get the peer reviews back, it'll be important to be able to assess that, but, you know.
But that's
talking-
why if we meet the 20th of September, we'll have the peer reviews back. We'll be in the process of working on this bylaw.
We're already after the close of the warrant by the 20th.
So we need to tell them, we need to tell the selectmen that we want to hold a spot for that as well, for this as well, and that we're working on it, and we'll give them the gist of it, but, well, we can talk about it right now. I think we need to age restrict it, and we need to come up with a guideline for what we're going to ask for, at least a good portion of them. Maybe not all of them, maybe 50% of them have to have some sort of affordability component to them. 25% of them at the affordable that we're talking about, and then another 25% of them at no more than 200 or 150, whatever number we decide, and then the rest of them can be market rate. At least we have a guarantee that there's going to be an affordable component. If you're going to go through the density, you're going to go through the town having to deal with these units, and I'm not talking about design and all the other stuff that the peer review is going to tell us that's not in there. We know there's no amenities in any of this. There's not even a talk about a shuffleboard court for a senior or anything else like that, that we haven't even got to. But I'm just saying that price and affordability and senior related so that they have a shot at it. If you mark them at,
Right, so as far as the age restriction goes, I understand what you're saying, and if we do that, I think the problem becomes is that the developer won't care if it's age restricted,
well, of course they don't.
right? So if we age restrict it, we're not going to benefit any low income, we're not going to benefit any disabled veterans, we're not
We
going to
could,
benefit school teachers.
we could ask for all of that. to be
DPW
waived.
workers, firefighters,
The
police
point I'm
officers.
getting at, we could still have that all in there.
So I think by
Military.
special, right, so by special permit, we can age restrict a development or a portion of. I don't think we need to change that in the bylaw.
Well, then we should at least spell it out that we,
Intend to make
Make
sure
this.
a portion of your development age restricted.
yes, that
I would-
will be age restricted.
A
Okay.
portion, well,
So what's the
you can't,
hesitation?
I don't understand what the hesitation, but I don't have a problem with doing it that way.
And actually, Federal Fair Housing Act
Right.
is,
Oh, well, that piece of it.
right, so
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
what I'm trying to avoid getting
They're
into.
not gonna look at little to the dinky little town, no one's gonna bother.
But,
I
so
heard that.
I actually have the amendments written out or at least started on here. Do you guys want to take a look at that so that we can go through it?
Sure.
Mhm, absolutely.
Okay. Because we can do it starting from the actual bylaw, or we can do it from what even led me to try to make these recommendations. Oh,
That's one packet.
yeah, that's what
The
Well,
whole
there
thing
should
is
be
one
only
back?
two. No, there should only be 2 documents.
3,
Sorry.
1, 2.
Oh, yeah, here it is.
There you go.
Look at that.
Sorry.
We should make a rule that a member of the planning board who's gonna write more than 2 pages needs to give it to us at least 2 weeks before the meeting.
I totally agree with that, and I should have been doing that instead of enjoying my vacation in Scotland. But instead, I just did it on the plane, Mark.
Nah.
You want to hand these to Cindy? Thanks. So I try to take what we have been discussing for the last couple of meetings about senior housing and what has been coming up as the concerns, and try to incorporate them based on what information I could find from the various studies and other documents that the town currently has related to these particular concerns.
Okay. And your, is that a 50% minimum
Where are you?
common open space, and that should be
Page 4,
Yeah,
E.
yep, 50%.
50%, okay. Open space is defined,
Yeah, that needs to be defined.
okay, well, yeah. Good lighting.
We already had no step entry, right?
Currently, what we have is one entrance with no step entry, as opposed to all.
Okay, well, you've addressed a bunch of the stuff that I've talked about. Age restriction and price, so I think we need to,
So would you like to walk through these in terms of some of the thinking?
how about a Reader's Digest for it, just because there's
Yeah.
people out there that probably want to speak about it as well,
Okay,
as well as
so,
the board, okay.
so the first one is related to the whole idea of where senior housing should even be cited. So there is information, and that's going to be in the other packet that I gave you. It addresses all the various topics that I have in here as recommendations. The Littleton Housing Production Plan that was done talks about the fact that senior-focused housing should not be placed in isolated locations, and that instead, we should guide new senior-focused housing development to areas that support senior health, mobility, independence, and participation in the community. So that's where I got that language from. And the master plan also identifies key areas as to where senior housing should be considered as well. So one proposed amendment, and again, this is very basic, very, very basic, sited within and around the Common, the Point, Littleton Center, the Depot, and the MBTA station, which are locations that can support all those various aspects of this, of senior living. The second one, around uses, is to add multifamily dwellings. And here's where I have a question, and Maren, I should have tried to ask you the question first. So in the senior housing bylaw, as it exists, we have a definition in the back that says dwelling multifamily, but yet it is not one of the uses. Is there, can you explain?
Yeah, there
What
was
is
if I recall correctly, there was a definition of multifamily dwelling in the zoning bylaw, and this was amending it. That was my recollection.
Okay. Well, what I was going to say about that is, because the definition is already in here, we don't need to try to define it. But if we were to add multifamily dwellings, that is the, what I'll call the A word, the apartment word. But if we were to try to limit whatever that apartment dwelling would look like, because we would have that ability to do that if we're creating it in the bylaw, so it's not frightening to people. But being able to do that is one of the key ways that is identified over and over again to be able to provide affordability to seniors. Then, moving on, you said Reader's Digest version. On page 4, the open space definition. So I took a look at some past developments that have a couple of 55-plus homes and/or are considered most often to be seniors living there. And what I found was that in Reed Meadow, 51% of that whole site is open space. Shelbourne Village is 58%, and Delaney Drive was 69% open space. So from the perspective of what we've had in the past, could we use that as a guideline to say maybe 50% open space for any senior development is the right amount? Again, just putting it out there as a straw man. And I know that we've had discussions about whether or not wetlands should be considered and how much of wetland should be acceptable. Based on conversations, I just took that number way down. Moving forward, under age-appropriate design, all of those changes are based off of the National Association of Home Builders. They have a definition of what is supposed to be best practices for senior living development. And I know that in the bylaw, we had quite a bit of this, so I just added in what I didn't see that was there. Okay? Then moving over to page 6, the senior resident, item number 4, which already exists, says the senior residential development is consistent with the goals I added and intentions of the Littleton Master Plan. In the other document that I gave you, there are at least 5 quotes from the master plan specifically addressing, so if you look at page 6 of this document, the one with all the thick words, there are citations in here that say specifically, the town will support its children, seniors, families, employees, and individuals by encouraging a variety of housing types. To encourage a variety of housing that meets the needs of different age groups and is affordable to people of different socioeconomic backgrounds. It will be important for Littleton to provide and maintain a diverse mix of housing options so that existing residents are not priced out as the town continues to grow and its housing increases in value. Encourage the town to allow for different types of housing at a variety of price points that support the local workforce. And providing housing that is affordable and available to young families helps replenish the town with new residents, including enabling adult children who grew up in Littleton with the opportunity to move back. So this is the intentions of the master plan, and that's why I thought it would be important to actually put in here that we want a diverse mix of housing options, including sizes, because bringing that size down is part of what will provide the affordability. Production costs can be brought down. I know what we've heard, but production costs can be brought down. At least 30% of homes in a development built as affordable as either income eligible or average median income. So one of the things that I think is important for folks to understand in our listening audience is we often talk about affordability as big A affordable and little a affordable. And let me make sure I get this right. So big A affordable is when somebody needs government assistance to be able to make ends meet and have a place to live. Little a affordable means that our working folks in town who need to be able to have something that they can afford with their income is also part of what we need to be able to provide. So it's big A affordable and little a affordable, and we need both. I recently heard of some information that I think would be helpful as it relates to the income qualified affordability that we should hear. So those are the primary recommendations that, based off what we've been discussing for the past couple of months. As I said, the documentation with all the language attached to it is essentially taking you as a reader through to say where should targeted senior residential developments and other housing be encouraged based on town studies. And so this is, again, where I got my information to identify the various points of where it should be and why it should be placed there. I have 4 pages identifying affordable housing and different options. You know, we could potentially have more affordability by amending the bylaw to include multifamily housing. We can encourage developers to build smaller homes that can be purchased as well for a lower price. We can amend the senior housing inclusionary bylaw from 25% back to, from 10% back to 25%. We can engage nonprofit developers to work with us in building affordable housing. The town of Shirley recently was able to work with a nonprofit entity to build 58 senior homes. And then the town has land. I think I read in the open space plan that the town owns 143 acres of non-conservation land. Is there any way to be able to eke a little bit of space anywhere within that town-owned land to be able to build something? So there are lots of options. I think we as a board should explore these options more in depth. So I'm done. I'll shut up.
I think,
Very,
Anna, thank you. I thought that was-
very thorough.
So if I can address some of the points that you brought up.
Yeah.
On cited within number 4 of 173, 146, applicability. I think those points are excellent as far as where we should cite them. I think the issue is, it ties back to again, the whole master plan, form-based and sewering, right? So if we can get the sewering that ties in these areas, we would definitely benefit by putting senior housing in those areas that you've listed, and there's no doubt about it. Right now, we don't have the capacity to site that type of housing in those areas, or in the common or the point. Perhaps at the depot, at the MBTA station, a treatment plant could be constructed, and we could do something there at some point.
I
But,
thought the point already had
Point is
their
a
own
sewer
sewer
plant.
system, and we can
right, but I don't know if
tell
they have the
can-
capacity to take on a housing development, nor is there zoning for it currently, right?
There's no zoning for it currently. Well, actually,
Is it like?
that was part of the overlay district. That was the village, wasn't it?
Well,
Did it start
yeah,
there?
it was assisted living facilities and long-term extended stay hotel were the two types of residences that could be allowed.
So
Well,
assisted
it-
would be nice to see over there.
And that actually brings up another point. On the very last page of this, I talk about numbers. What kind of numbers should we realistically be expecting to see in terms of growth or development in housing? And typically, on average, what we've seen is somewhere between 40 to 60 new housing units being developed over the last few years. And I think between now and 2030, we should kind of anticipate to be seeing that as well. So even if we were to say at the point, again, just as an example, if a multifamily dwelling could be built there for seniors, if we were to build 20 even, it's not a big number, but 20 could fulfill a good part of the current need.
Yep, they make a good point about the point.
I think it would be, I think it would be super senior friendly. I mean, it is a steep slope site, that is one issue, but for the most part, it is still fairly walkable. And I think if you could cite a assisted living or a multifamily or an apartment building on that site through, whether form-based and their sewer treatment can, I'd love to see a nonprofit come in and propose
And I'd like
such
to
a
see us
study.
use some of the land that we have to start building senior housing.
Well, and
So in that note, I would think that if we were looking at our own land, then we should be looking at how we subsidize that, whether we invite in and do a 100-year lease with a nonprofit, or whether we try to subsidize it ourselves, and, which
We
gets,
need to get the selectmen to lease a piece of land now.
well, I think the selectmen, and I don't want to speak for them, but I think they'd be willing to entertain any suggestions and have a conversation with us. They haven't been opposed to having a conversation with us about senior residential.
We've talked in the past about land,
Well, not before my time, so.
before your time, yes. Yeah.
Well, Habitat for Humanity is one of those nonprofit organizations that they could actually come in and provide a good majority of the funding and, build it with the perspective.
And the
of-
town has been able to work with Habitat in the past. The Affordable Housing Trust will have the ability to do a lot of the things that you've talked about. The whole
We just need to put
property
money in
fund. Well, and that's not going to be that difficult because
The zoning that we wrote for inclusionary and kind of tie in some money, hopefully fairly quickly.
right, there are CPA funds that are set aside for housing that are still under CPA control. One thing that Affordable Housing Trust could do is request that funding to be moved to the Affordable Housing Trust. It's not an insignificant amount at this point.
And I think your suggestion on moving it back to 25% is affordable. I would support that. I think that we've shown that there's certainly enough profit in a senior residential development that at 25%, they're support it. They're not giving up too much to be a successful development in any aspect. So I would support that. My biggest concern in all this would be age restriction. You know, I think we're better off doing age restriction as a special
I don't have a
permit.
problem with that, as long as we let the developers know up
Well,
front that we're, I have,
as age restriction, just remember, you know, the Fair Housing Act comes into play, so.
okay. Would you have a problem with it if we worked on a ladder of pricing?
No, I
First.
think sliding it up, a sliding scale of some sort, moving it up and down a certain percentage at, you know, 25% is what we consider at 188 or 187, and then, you know, you get it 10% or 15%, whatever it is. If you want to move the whole thing so that less than 50% is market rate, I think that's reasonable,
Okay.
you know,
All right.
absolutely.
Good,
Yeah,
all
I
right,
think
so
that-
we're moving, we're going forward, okay, I'm good with that, and I'm good with a lot of what you put in there. I have a little bit of a problem with the apartments, not at the Point, I think the Point is a perfect place. I think, I guess I'm realistic, having sat here
So
for,
can I ask a question on the apartment conversation? If we were to consider it, what about on a campus site like this? We're doing a needs assessment study right now for the town, and if the town was to, let's just say that the town was to repurpose this building into apartments for seniors and/or build a structure on this campus for seniors, where you had the town library, hopefully a new town office, new library, you know, new COA.
I got you,
new
okay,
recreational.
how about if we did it this way? How about we would say you can put apartments in Littleton, providing that it's a partnership with the town of Littleton, you can put them anywhere, how's that? That way, if we're gonna repurpose this, or we're gonna do something else, allow apartments.
Like, you don't want to say anywhere, but.
Well, not anywhere, but
Within
you can
the
allow,
designated
we'll
sites.
allow the higher density for apartments as long as it's a partnership with, a friendly partnership with the town of Littleton, whether it's whether it's on our land and it's built, as long as it's a partnership with the town, then we could explore the opportunity of having higher density through apartments, so that I could live with that, as long as the town's.
Got a stake in it.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and the same thing with the Point, you know? The Point can put assisted, independent living there right now in their
Assisted.
assisted living in there. So maybe we see if we could get a little bit of both out of them for that, apartments and assisted living, see if, maybe we bring Mr. Park in and see if he's still got pads left, maybe he's interested in that, maybe he's not, maybe he doesn't even know it exists. Maybe we reach out to him and send him a thing and see if he wants to come in and discuss that with us, which I think would be happy to discuss it. But I'm good with that, if you want to do apartments, and I think if it's a partnership with the town, and the town can,
Well, I think that's how we get to the affordability that we really keep talking about,
right,
right? I
that's
think
one of the ways. There's still other ways, we can,
Right,
I'm
that's
gonna
just
ask
it.
Jamie.
It doesn't have to be all or nothing, black or white.
Yep.
Any of these different options can be utilized.
what do you think?
You're asking me now that you've had your back towards me all night?
Well, I kind of, well, I'm sorry, all right, I'll just look at you now, okay? Well, your turn that way too.
There's nobody behind me.
All right, okay, I apologize, I have my back to you. I'm worried about him, I have to watch him, I don't have to watch you. How's that, okay? What do you think?
I think that I like the idea of exploring some of the structures, like you said, like basically recycling old buildings. I drive by the DCU building every day uptown, and I think that would just be, in my eyes, a good location, and it's, you know, it's a large structure, there's parking behind it, and I think location is very important if we're talking about our seniors. They like to go for walks, but they also, I mean, busy roads and stuff aren't really ideal either. I think they need to have access to parks and things, and I don't really like the idea of stereotypical apartments in town, but I do see where they become affordable. So it's definitely, this bylaw has opened our eyes to a lot of different stuff, and kind of
Sure
seeing
has.
the developers that have come into play has really, you know, opened the conversation, and maybe it does need to be buttoned up over time. But, you know, you kind of live and you learn, so,
Definitely.
yeah.
Does board have any more questions? Can we open up to the public since they've
Please.
quietly sat here and listened to us for a good hour? Does anyone in the audience have any questions or concerns? Cindy, why did I think you would?
Well, not really questions or concerns, Mark. Cindy Napoli, Springfield Drive.
And I'm sorry.
Also a member of the Board of Selectmen. I loved the points that Anna raised in her presentation, was going to echo a few of those. You know, starting with the housing production plan, back in 2014, we've had 8 reports generated that have spoken to the type of housing that we need in Littleton. According to the changes in householders in the production plan, the largest age groups that are going to experience growth in Littleton are ages 25 to 39 and 60 and older by 2030. I'm sure you guys know that. These age groups are for housing that's affordable, has minimal upkeep, maintenance, and includes amenities and common areas, which we've spoken about here tonight. One of the things, Anna spoke to multi-unit dwellings, and they also speak of that in the master plan. It also talks about 84% of our housing stock is detached, one-unit, single-unit dwellings. Only 6% of our housing stock consists of multi-unit structures. Our housing stock is out of balance, and I think we need to fix that. And you've spoken of that here tonight. One thing that I've learned with talking to people, I've met with Lisa Larrabee over at the Housing Authority. I've talked to Chief Wodzinski, Chris Stoddard, and one thing that I've learned is that these departments, the Highway Department, the Park and Rec Department, the Fire Department, are having trouble attracting employees to their departments, and then employees that they do hire, they're having trouble retaining them because they can't afford to live here. There's teachers in our school system that grew up here that can't afford to live in Littleton. And most compelling to me was Lisa Larrabee at the Housing Authority. There's 34 seniors on a waiting list for subsidized rental housing in Littleton. These are Littleton seniors that need that type of housing. So until we create multi-unit dwellings, I don't think that we're going to get the affordability that we need to help these age groups, which we know need help. You know, people want to live in Littleton. People grow up here, want to stay in Littleton. We need to attract employees to our businesses. We want to redo the Common and attract more businesses. We want to redo Taylor, Foster Street. All of those businesses need employees that can afford to live in our town. And I just don't see with the existing bylaw that we have with the cottage concept, as we've seen with Jones Development, that maybe that approach isn't really the best approach for the affordability that we're trying to achieve. And also, we're missing out. I know a lot of this has to do with the seniors, but there are a lot of seniors that don't want to live in a house. They have a house. They want to downsize. They want to live in an apartment or a condo where they don't have to mow the lawn. They don't have to worry about raking leaves or shoveling snow. They like the apartment living concept. And, you know, Liz spoke about it in a letter that she wrote to you. They like amenities. They like common areas. So I think we really need to revisit the whole bylaw in general, because I think that there's a whole demographic and need that we're really not, that we're missing with this. And so I just wanted to just raise that. And Anna, thank you so much for the work that you did and put into this, because I think we can get there. I know a lot of work has been put into what we have right now, and I think this issue has been brought to light in a lot more detail to this point. But we can get there. But I just don't want to lose sight and be narrow-minded. I think we really need to look at multi-unit dwellings in places that make sense, and that's what it says in one of the reports. Focus on density in places that make sense. It doesn't really make sense in my mind to necessarily have it in a residential neighborhood. It makes more sense to have it down by the train station, to have it up by the Common, to have it at the Point, as you talked about. And I think if we plan and say, sure, this is the type of housing we want, this is where we want it, this process will go a lot better and prove to be a lot more effective and get us what we're really trying to accomplish with these bylaws. So, that's all.
The public outcry about the density that we've been proposing from this bylaw has been overwhelming. We haven't seen this kind of
Attention?
yeah, since probably the when they were gonna put the supermarket in across from Donald's, we had that much interest in what was going on. If we start proposing apartment buildings, I mean, I just remember everybody in the town meeting were afraid that this bylaw was gonna lead the way to apartments all over the place. I understand what you've said about
Right.
specific places, but I think I agree we need to, that's what I'm saying,
We
maybe
need a
if the
different
town
type of
controls
housing
it.
outside of individual cottage, little individual homes.
Well, the hope was, when we originally talked about it that way, they were gonna be small, inexpensive, first-time starter houses, like they were back, right after the Second World War. That's what we
Little pink
hoped.
houses.
Little, yeah,
Little pink, right.
but that's all we're getting, so that's.
Well, it's what the market will bear.
Yeah, but we could make it so the market would bear. They could be deed restricted, and they could be at a certain price, so that everybody knows going in, they're buying into a development that's, you know, when they buy it, they're paying X, when they sell it, they're gonna get a little more than X, but it's still gonna be senior, affordable housing. It's gonna be a affordable housing complex. So we're not seeing that, but the point I'm trying to make is, if we try to do too much and add apartments to try to change what we have going on now, I think everything's gonna go up.
I know, but so, right,
So maybe we do it in stages, maybe we talk about sponsored apartment complexes in desirable locations, but we fix what we have first. And I don't think we can do, what I'm trying to say is, I don't think we do them both at the same time without getting crucified at town meeting.
right, well,
I know, I see the three hands, I was just finishing my
oh,
point.
sorry.
Sir, way in the back, your name from Myron too, by the way.
Yeah, Seal and Manicum, 11 Cricket Lane. So I think, just speaking to the points that have been made here, and I kind of like the direction that this conversation has gone in, was at the meeting when the amendment was made to the senior bylaw, like removing the age restriction and whatnot. I think the piece, from my perspective and other people that I have spoken to, the density is really only scary depending on where it is. And when you looked at how the bylaw was written, when we're talking about the zoning areas and where it's desirable, I think for most people that made sense, and we were all on board with that. I think a couple of the developments that have popped up seem to be in locations that all of a sudden didn't fit what was talked about at those initial town meetings, and that's where you might have seen the outcry and stuff. I think if it's proposed in certain locations, I would like to think that most of the citizens in Littleton are fairly reasonable, you know.
Well, we'll take it, yes. Yes, Michael.
Michael Zeldin, 11 Low Street, and coincidentally chairman of the committee. I'd like to point out that during the workshop, it was made very clear that the kind of, shall we say, development that would proceed for revitalization in the common would include, it's quite explicit, 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. It's very explicit. And if this is accepted, I think that the notion that the resistance to apartments in Littleton is not quite as great as is being presented in many different forms. So I think that stepping up, and as Anna indicated, we don't have to place everything in, we don't have to do it all in one place, we have to do it all in the common. But it would strike me that that's a very good place to at least start the discussion, because it's very natural there. And there are many seniors who would prefer to be in a place where they could walk to the grocery store, and if the other amenities can be added to the common, including more crosswalks and all the rest, which the state is prepared to do, if we do our part, this could change the terrain quite a bit. So I think I'd like to encourage the group to think about apartments sooner rather than later.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Rob Houston, 20 Meeting House Road. I just wanted to reiterate or jump on what Jamie said. I think the DCU building, the repurposing of existing buildings, and that building makes perfect sense right across the street from Donald's, right? I mean, part of what I've been a little frustrated just watching from afar is the developers that we've got in this town are the consistent same developers over and over again. We don't have developers with vision about what to do. Maybe another developer could repurpose the DCU building.
Well,
in the con.
in
for
fairness to
apartments.
the developers that are in town, if I may just interrupt real quick, one of the two developers that we've seen before us has actually, at one point, tried to purchase a DCU building to do such a thing, but zoning wouldn't allow it, but there were conversations had, so I don't want to
Perfect.
disparage any of the
I
developers
just
that are
want
in
to be,
town.
I'm not disparaging any developers. What I am encouraging is the idea of how we can get additional developers, call it competition, right? Competition breeds brilliance and ideas. And instead of pulling up old floor plans to build new developments, we would have new developments from old buildings, perhaps, right? I mean, there are other ways to think about this, and I would like to see more encouragement, and using the word apartment is really helpful when our housing stock is so out of balance. We need apartments in the right places. So that's all I've got to say.
Yes, ma'am, in the back.
Jennifer Manicum, 11 Cricket Lane. I guess I'd just like to say that this conversation and what we're talking about is so different looking than what we have seen submitted so far to, from the developers that are submitting plans under the bylaw, that I would hope that all of these dialogues would indicate that we still have work to do on making it what it should be. And I would hope that, that this board would really consider seriously how much, how different this bylaw could be applied, and that you would take caution and in looking at anything that was submitted up to this point. I mean, there's clearly so much discussion about what should be approved under this bylaw. I hope that will be a real red flag to the developments that you're looking at right now. Obviously, I live on Cricket Lane. It's no surprise why I'm concerned about this. You know, we're all clear about this. But you know, if we're all talking about the fact that, you know, location, I mean, Jamie Cruz just said location is really important when talking about our seniors, and people are talking about what really works for seniors. I hope that becomes, you know, painfully clear that we cannot, you know, we can't approve something even if the law is on the books, right? If it's not a good law, we can't just, you know, say, well, you guys can sneak in because we haven't changed the law yet. You know, we really have to be mindful of this, and I hope that that's what these conversations will reveal.
So if I may, so in the conversations that we've had with the developers that have been before us already, I would say that my effort, when they've been in front of us, is to get them to peer review. I wanted to get the feedback from the consultants that are the professionals, so that we could then share with them and all of you what works and what doesn't. And this conversation, I think, is bringing us there sooner than the peer review. But that's really what I was pushing for, was to try to get that peer review done, so that then we could say to them, here's what works, here's where you're falling short, and here's what you would need to do to make it beneficial to the town. Because even if what they propose right now meets a portion of the bylaw, by no means has either proposal met the whole bylaw, you know, but we need to get them to peer review. So that was my intent the whole time, was I wanted to get the peer review done from Barrett Associates and from Green International, so that we can go back to them and say, it's not beneficial to the town.
And the
But
peer
I don't
review-
want to shoot from the hip up here without getting the input from the consultants.
And the consultants, are they just engaged by the town? Like, who chooses, who evaluates a project for peer review?
We choose. We choose.
Green has always done our technical, for lack of a better word. They look at the engineering, whether it's compliant with the zoning that's in place. We're using Barrett because Judy Barrett helped write the bylaws. We want her to see how the interpretation of what we worked on and she wrote, or helped write, how it's working or not working. So that's why we've decided to have her take a look at least the first couple of ones that we have. And if we decide we need to send it out to somebody else, we'll send it out to whoever. If it needs a traffic consultant, we'll find a traffic. Well, I'm not saying it does, I'm just saying if it needs it, we have the right, and we get the money from the developer to send it where we want it sent, so we're comfortable. So that's how that works. So it's not, they didn't pick it, it's up to us to do it. Going back to your talk about the bylaw, I'm gonna take a page out of what the selectmen said to us when we met with the selectmen about it. And Chase was 100% on when he said, it's gotta be the right unit, the right project coming out of the gate. It can't be almost what we wanted or close to what we wanted. It's gotta be what we wanted, because this is too important to be, you know, close enough. We all, I think, had an idea when we wrote the bylaw, the intent and the spirit of what we wanted the bylaw to do. And I think the reality has set in that there were great ideas and there were maybe pie in the sky on our part as the town to expect these to do it bad. Now I think we're realizing that in order to get exactly what we want, we gotta have a little more, we need more force on the town side to be able to tell the developers exactly what. We can't rely on the economics of who knew the town of Littleton would be one of the most desirable places to live, and the property values were gonna go through the roof. We never expected that. We need to be able to have a way artificially to control that problem, that great problem that we have. So that's what I'd like to see us do, is to address those, because at the end of the day, the most important part of this whole bylaw is the fact that the people that have lived in this town for 30, 40, 50 years paying the taxes should be able to age in place in the town of Littleton where they've grown up with all their friends, and we should do everything we can to make sure that that happens. And I'm committed to making sure that happens, and I'm hopeful that the rest of the board will come up with something that will make it so that maybe we don't get everybody, we get most of them to be able to stay in the town of Littleton if they so desire, which I think they all do. Everyone that's come to our meetings and talked to us has said that they want to stay here with their friends, and they want to be able to socialize here.
The only other comment I would make is that if we do in fact go to town meeting and change the bylaw, I really don't know how much hard work this would be. And I mean, we come to all the meetings, so I know that I might be speaking not representative of people in the town, but I would say that because we had such a vested interest, we talked to lots of people in the town, and almost to a person, even I'm sure people that voted for it didn't know that it wasn't age restricted, didn't know, and had no idea that the density had changed to, 4 homes per acre. And these are probably people like us who voted for this, so it would be helpful to have like one night, if it's broadcast or something, of just details. It's hard to understand all the impact. I know it comes out in a pamphlet, but the impact of something before you go in and vote for it. So
to speak to that, we had probably
We had many meetings.
10 or 12 public meetings discussing all of those issues. I would like to say that because you're engaged and because of something that was proposed in your area, please stay engaged and watch the proposals that occur all over town. This is how I ended up getting involved. It's the same thing. So
yeah.
I look forward to your participation from here on out, and I think it's great. So.
Yeah, but I mean, I would say now that it's become, I mean, you said the outcry is huge, so at least for this issue, there may be more people who now would maybe watch where they wouldn't have before, and be, it's just be educated before we go in and vote.
This is a unique situation in Littleton. We've never had this kind of density. Everything's always been, when we do an open space plan or anything, it's always been a one-to-one trade-off. It's always been, if you got 25 acres and you can build 20 houses there, we'll give you an open space plan, you'll cluster them all over here, we get 20 acres, and you still get your 20 houses. It's always been that kind of trade-off. Now, we have a trade-off where instead of building just one house, you can build 4 houses. And I don't think we anticipated the economics and the issues that would create. It's lopsided, and that's what I'm talking about. We're trying to get the numbers back so that it's more palatable. So, but think about it. Back after the Second World War, look at all the middle of the Littleton. It was all quarter-acre lots, and that's basically what we're talking about here. And nobody complained about it because they were all small, little, and everyone was buying the same kind of house. That's not the case anymore. So the density's not the issue. It's the price and who can buy it has really what become the issue. So we have to balance that issue.
Location.
With, yes, location, where it goes, because you don't want it in a neighborhood that has all these houses, then all of a sudden you've got 30 houses crammed in the middle of all the other houses. I get that. We don't want to try to make it look like something like that. We want to try to make it so that it's either sits by itself and it's a unique neighborhood in and of itself, or that it blends into what's around it. And that's the difficulty that we're having now. And also, like I said, we've done all of this, we have all this paperwork in front of us. It's no good unless the seniors who actually live in Littleton can afford to buy it and can afford to be able to get into those units. Otherwise, we've wasted our time.
Well, I appreciate the hard work of it,
Jamie,
because
you
I
have
know it's hard.
anything to add? No one else? I guess we spoke. So I would like to see us move forward and schedule a spot for the selectmen to put on the agenda so that we can address modifications to the existing bylaw and have a public hearing on it, addressing Anna's concerns. I'd like to work a little bit on my concerns about pricing and come up with a proposal for that. I don't have a problem if we leave if the age restriction is part of the special permit, but we put something in the special permit that there is going to be a component of this that's going to have some sort of age restriction.
I just think we open ourselves up to litigation that way, with the Fair Housing Act. That's all. I'm just trying to make sure that.
We'll get town council
That's
to
the
weigh
way
in on
in.
that.
Okay.
You know, because if you, and I'm not saying,
Because I don't think we need, if we now take it and we say, here are the locations that you can actually put it, you know, if we're gonna take this broad senior residential development bylaw and say, and here's where it works, and now we've reduced it, I don't think we then need to age restrict it anymore, because we're gonna put it in campus settings, right? I mean, it's kind of like where we're going with this. And as far as, you know, I want to get back to one comment that was made about cottage style. I still think that's an important component to the bylaw, only because I don't think one development fits all needs. Now, you could have a campus that had your apartment style, your garden style, with cottage style also. And this goes back to the very beginning of the conversation, when
Right.
Judy first came in and we talked about a 55 and older, moving to a two-bedroom cottage style. And down the bottom of the hill was the assisted living.
Right.
And then life care, you know. And so I still think it's an important component to the bylaw. I wouldn't want to see it eliminated. I just don't think it's
shouldn't be
standalone.
the
I don't know.
focus.
I don't
Yeah.
think it should be the focus.
Exactly.
yeah, when we first started it, that's why we had it all in there, so there
Right.
would be, we anticipated a project that had different variations to
Right.
it. Not one project had all the same in it, because it's more cost effective to build all these
Right.
condos on top of each other, and we
So far,
thought
that's
we'd
not
get,
what
we'd
we've
get,
seen.
that's not
We've
what we're
seen
seeing.
all-
I think we need to, also, as we tweak this or amend this, maybe we put in something that, there should be a mix of different housing and a variety.
Yeah, I considered that, and I didn't know whether or not that would be
We could
doable.
do
Yeah.
it, we could put it in there. You keep saying in the special permit, you gotta spell it out so that you can lead them there, that's my point. You can't just say, well, we can do whatever we want, we really can't. We can, but we can't. It's better if it's spelled out, because then, you know, then the lawyers don't make as much money if it's spelled out.
Well, I think we could look at it that way. I also think that with the ones that are before us that have placeholders, that we can work on them by saying that you need to mix up the components that you have presented and/or.
Well, yeah, we're still not even that far along. We're
Right, but
still
I'm
in
saying, I want to,
preliminary.
right, we're still in preliminary. They haven't got anything that's.
Yes, sir.
Rob Houston, Meeting House Road. As you talk about this, I just would encourage you to please, cottage style, I think is terrific. I think that's one component. But I think you also need to, the same people who could be neighbors in town, one wants to go to cottage style, the other one wants an apartment. They are really one and the same for that independent, you know, senior living. Some people like apartments, some people like their land. But I think they fit the same subgroup of people, and it's all pre-assisted living. So on your campus, I would suggest cottage style and apartments going into the next.
See, I know you haven't been in Littleton that long, so I'll give you a short little history lesson. Littleton has always voted against apartments.
Again, it goes to place,
But that was.
time and place. Now we're talking about places, right?
Let me finish, let me get there. So, for the past 50 years since zoning's been in town, Littleton didn't want to have apartments like some of the other towns did, like Acton, and we didn't want apartments. We wanted people that lived in houses. It was a rural farming community. You know, we was even talking one time about going to 2 acres only, like Groton had, so that we wouldn't have the sprawl. Everyone wants the open space. They didn't want the tightness of some of what they were saying. So that's why apartments never got approved. Now,
changed.
Now it's a new millennium
Times
and
have
everything
changed.
else, and maybe it's time to start revisiting some sort of limited apartments in the town of Littleton that can address first-time home buyers and the seniors to be able to find a place in Littleton they can afford to go to once they sell their big house. And
Which is kind of the reason I'm just suggesting it's part of your language. It's just really how you start talking about it, that's all. Because if you don't use the word, people are gonna get
I'm
shocked.
not afraid of the word apartment. I almost know how to spell it. I get that.
Shorten it, APT. You can shorten it.
APT? I work on APT buildings, so I know what they are. You know, so the point, I get that. But the only thing I'm trying to say about apartments right now with what we're doing is, I want to get, the bylaw as it sits right now is more important to fix than to add the apartments to it right now. I don't want to jeopardize.
I don't disagree with you,
We'll
but
talk
I
about
want you to
that.
start, I'm suggesting you just start using additional language, that's all.
I love
You'll
apartments.
start warming people up.
Trust me, I love apartments. I really do. Anyway,
Can I just say,
one more thing. I'll look at you while she's talking. Go ahead.
I was really taken aback by that number, that we have 34 seniors from Littleton on a waiting list for housing. That puts a greater urgency on this.
I agree, and I think that's why part should stay in on the rewording.
So please consider that, please.
There are other avenues to developing senior apartments. They don't have to be allowed by zoning. There could be a proposal for a friendly 40B, and could do that, and 40B where that circumvents zoning. So,
And it would happen quicker than,
well, you take a,
depends.
right.
We need an
It
applicant.
depends, yeah.
You wouldn't have to count on town meeting, 2/3 vote at town meeting to change the zoning bylaw.
Well, something to consider, thanks, Lauren. The other thing that I wanted to mention is the whole concern about what counts and doesn't count in the housing inventory. Is there a number that we should be focused on ensuring that every year, a goal that says every year we need to be creating X number of affordable units, so that we don't get
10%.
ourselves.
Yes.
Well, right, it's the 10%.
If
but-
we're producing 40 houses a year, which is, you know, a little above our average, there should be 4 units of affordable housing every year.
And my question is whether that's even enough.
In
In-
socioeconomics, I say no,
No.
but in real economics,
Well, right now,
it keeps us ahead of the game.
keeps
Okay,
us ahead of
Could we,
10%.
should we, and could we ask for more?
yeah,
I would hope to get more.
Yeah,
okay.
I
'Cause
think
that's,
the old bylaw is 25%. I don't think it's unreasonable to put the new bylaw where the old bylaw
yeah,
was.
okay,
I think we
good, all right.
started 25%.
And then finally, I wanted to mention this, my previous life in the business world, I wanted to really give the board and everybody who's been working on this for, I don't know how long, at least a couple years, and Maren, a lot of kudos, because inventing something from scratch is very difficult. And being able to put it out there and see if it works or if it doesn't work, and then going back and changing it, the fact that we're willing to do that, I think says a lot about what we're really trying to accomplish for the town. Because in the business world, you have to reinvent or you die, you go away. And so in that sense, we don't have a choice. We have to do what's appropriate for our seniors and what we've said we're going to do. So I think this is great that we're looking at this and saying, certain pieces of it may not be working as well as we'd like, so let's figure it out. So thank you.
So we're on for the 20th. Any last words before we continue on? Thank you all for coming, by the way. Okay, we have a few more housekeeping issues to take care of, and then we can adjourn. We got bills, we already done the bills, minutes. Anybody have any questions on the minutes?
Make a motion to approve minutes as drafted?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Construction inspection reports?
What I'm trying to do is just get those posted to the project pages.
I already talked about form-based zoning, right?
Yeah, and I posted 2 more links to the state website. The Smart Growth website's been updated with more form-based code.
Do you have 10 minutes you don't know what to do with? Maybe you could learn everything you could about form-based zoning and then enlighten us. How's that?
Be happy to.
No, you don't. I'm only kidding.
I've been-
She's already doing it.
I've been looking at it, it's really very exciting, because it talks about the developers improving the public spaces.
Okay, then last but not least, transfer of development rights.
And I put some links again on the planning board
And I would
page.
say yes, because on one of those links, it specifically talks about the town or the municipality identifying the sending and receiving areas, so I think that should actually be part of our discussion as well.
Right, and TDR, a lot of towns have adopted it, very few have been able to use it successfully. So it's a tool for the toolbox that's really fun to get excited about, but it hasn't been extremely useful, except when you realize that the state is providing some funds for sending areas to help the process, because otherwise, and
It
the
is a
sending
fu-
areas help.
It is an
Set
exciting
us-
tool, though,
yeah.
when you look at what you can do with it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just,
You get the open space preserved, you help those that want to keep their land open, you help the downtown areas become revitalized.
Maybe there's a way to connect all this.
Well, we've looked at it for years. I mean,
Well,
I hate to say it, the one who
you've
was
heard
really
about it.
big on it was Don MacGyver. He was always talking about transfer of development rights, so.
Yeah.
We have talked about it. We had Magic in here to talk about it as well. So it's not that we don't know about it, it's just nobody
Right.
wants to do it.
well.
It's a heavy lift, but
Right, well, I think this board is poised to do some heavy lifting in the next year or so.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, I agree. All right, are we done for the night? I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
All right.
Aye. Thank you. Get us-